everyone. Welcome. I'm glad we had you do the intro because that gives all of us that are running to get a glass of water, to leave a client, to get present, to get here. So nice to see you, the ones that are there. I know you guys are there, and you can turn on your camera, you could chat, whatever you can do. Today we're going to talk about culture-specific trauma-informed for working with survivors. But before we get into it, let me have, or Norma, Zakia, if you want to say hello.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a great long weekend and now you're ready to be here with us. Thank you.
Good morning from California. Hope everybody had some rest. And today we are going to talk about something very, very important and integral to our work. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you and learning with you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to explain why we're just jumping in. We know we started talking about VAWA self-petition since last year, 2022. And then we came into U-Visa, and then I told you we were going to talk about affidavits, and we were going to talk about maybe helping survivors with declarations in a trauma-informed way. And then it came to me that we haven't talked about what trauma-informed is. And so before we start to talk about how to work with survivors on their affidavits or personal statements or that, we should talk about what trauma is. And I know we all hear about it in our work, it's what we write in our grants, being victim-centered, trauma-informed approach. And then we have Norma, who just is an expert on trauma-informed approach. She was talking to me about how she did a presentation, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about that background, but I said, hey, we're not going to waste that knowledge, that expertise that we have in this group, and we all have some part of it. And so I thought maybe we will start talking about that now, and maybe this should have been something we covered in the first season of Advocate COP. So let me start to share my slides. And we're a small group today, so it's good. We're going to get to learn a lot from each other, and that's good, because sometimes when there's a lot of us, maybe we might not get to do it as often. So here we said hello. Thank you for OVW for giving us this time, the funding to have this. We also were going to thank Norma's grants, because a lot of these slides, they're beautiful, come from her funds that she used in her project to put this presentation, and she'll give you a little intro of this presentation. First, and I know we all have our membership, but I still want us to tell each other what city and state we're in, because sometimes we forget it, or we can talk about just know regionally where we are. So New App is in DC, but Rocio, I'm in El Paso, Texas. And then go ahead and type in there: Alabama, Washington, DC, Fredericksburg, California, Georgia, Marietta, Rhode Island. While you guys are typing that, I wanted to tell you we still have a few more slots ready for registration and about the conference. If any of you have registered, have questions about it, we're part of this group, so feel free to reach out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with the conference, I'm going to put you here my email and tell me you're interested, but we're having a conference in Boston. It's OVW funded, and it'd be great to see each other in person. So here's my email, and you have it, right? Because I send you a lot of emails. Okay, so this is a two-part session, and the reason it's a two-part session is because with talking about trauma-informed care comes talking about how our organization can be healthy, because we need the self-care. And so this is we're doing this as a series, and so we're meeting June 28th from same time. 1 to 2:30 Eastern. So save this date already. If somebody wasn't able to make this part 1, we'll also send them the recording. And for the little icebreaker, I'm inviting you all to my imaginary party with a advocate community of practice. What's going to be the dish that you bring to my potluck, our party? And so type it in the chat. And then Nadeshi gave you some instructions, but we'll cover that right now. Right now, right now I'm focused on the party. And so what are you gonna bring? Since I'm the host, I guess I'm gonna bring the big heavy dish, but I would love to see what else you all bring. Taco ceviche, cream corn pudding. Pupus. Flan, fruit salad, pupusas. Zakia, tell me how you say that and what it is. Delicious.
It's a faluda. It's a dessert with a rose drink and ice cream and some, it's just yummy.
It sounds delicious. Frijoles charros, potato salad. Let's see, with that, I guess we need something a little heavy, so I'll bring the carne asada. Ice cream. Okay, we're not hungry, not us, right? Okay, and frijoles, yummy. Okay, great. Sounds like we're gonna have a good time. All right, for the activity, and we're gonna see how this works out. It depends on who came today. You know, on Zoom, rename yourself. If you work in a law enforcement office, you know how to rename yourself. You see where your name is, right? And then you left click to rename. Let me double check that it's right. Left click. It's right click. Right click, rename. And then you're gonna put where your name, right? And you're gonna put a comma and you're gonna put, if you work in a law enforcement, a victim advocate, you're gonna put LE. If you work at a prosecutor's office, you're gonna put WIT for victim witness. If you work at a nonprofit, put non-P. So that counts, you know, all the other programs will be non-P. So go ahead and rename yourself. I'm gonna see. Okay, and we'll put the instructions there in the chat and we'll see how that works out. If we don't have a good split, then when we break out, we won't do it that way. So let's get started. I'm gonna put Nadesi put the instructions there for us, and I'll put them there for those that got pulled away. For nonprofit, it's non-P. Okay. All right. So this to you, Norma.
Thank you. So yeah, I want to share with all of you about this presentation, what Rocio was sharing with you. So I work at Cherokee Family Violence Center. If you don't know me, I'm the Multicultural Program Director of Cherokee Family Violence Center, and we have a partnership with the State Department where we receive some fellows internationally, where they learn about our best practices so they can bring this knowledge to their country and then implement it in some specific projects. So they invited me this year to participate in a global conference in Romania, actually, and they invited me to present about what is trauma-informed and what are some of our best practices. So we can learn from each other. And of course, I mean, there were like 70 persons from around the world, which was super interesting because then you can learn, you know, about their practices over abroad. But in the meantime, when I was sharing with Rocio, we thought that it would be helpful just to share. I mean, I know that most of you already know about this topic because we're working on this field, but however, we want to learn from other practices from around the country. So yeah, trauma. What was your question about trauma? So yeah, trauma, I mean, as you know, trauma can produce this intense fear. It could make the people or the victims to feel helpless. They can lose their control, and this is normal, you know, and they can really feel overwhelmed about normal coping mechanisms. And all of us might already know that, but sometimes, you know, when you are working with so many clients over and over every day, sometimes we forget about this. And I think it's a good reminder to keep in mind that the people that we're working with might come from a different point where they really might interact in a different way, and it's just okay. It's part of the trauma they have been living on. Can you go to the next one? So some types of trauma, it depends, no? It could be individual and intergenerational trauma. And there's a lot of clients that I've been working with, you know, that the mother was living also this type of domestic violence, let's just say, and then, you know, the cycle of abuse, and then that little girl that was living on domestic violence, they're living it again, and it's intergenerational. However, it could be also regarding some specific culture, you know, where they are living this intergenerational. And I don't know if Rocio or Saka or anyone else would like to share like a specific example of what would be that intergenerational trauma. Do you have any example?
Yeah, I can give you an example, Norma. For example, you know, in South Asia has been colonized by the British Empire for 200 years, right? So, and at that time, there was so much of division within people, depending on their religion, ethnicity. So many people have suffered through that. Many of our family members, like my own family, right? We have gone through 3 different geographical boundaries and changed our citizenships 3 times. And that can create certain types of, you know, unresolved trauma for people that can come up at any time when you are talking to somebody, again, an authoritarian figure, and it can take you back to those, you know, very repressive regimes that you may have lived under. If you are a minority, you had so many restrictions. And again, in a relationship, you relieve those restrictions. So I think it affects many of us in many different ways. We just have to be mindful about people's experience.
Yeah, the example I can think of is my dad doesn't speak English very well, so he gets very nervous about it, and he thinks that he, you know, in Mexico he has education, but here he doesn't, and you have to respect your boss all the time, and you could never quit your job. So he's always asking me how my boss is, and you know, that's always like, I was raised, you just have to follow rules, respect your job, and not talk a lot, because you don't sometimes belong here. I think that's a trauma that came passed down to me.
Exactly.
And some of us might have that too.
Thank you, Rocio. I think Ibelis, do you want to share also?
No, I'm good. Sorry, I was just listening.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for those examples. Exactly. Beth is saying refugees experience, generation growing up displaced, of course. And then let's talk about community, cultural, and systems inflicted trauma. And that might be, I mean, it's also a very exacerbated trauma, no, that can happen within certain communities, and refugees it could be, you know, or maybe it could be Jewish community for so long, you know. And I don't know, any other example that you might think of? Anyone? And please feel free.
Norma, I will tell you, in the United States right now, there is so much of Islamophobia going on. So some people might say, well, my community is being persecuted They may feel they are being persecuted, and that can add an additional layer in their trauma.
Exactly. African American community might be feeling that they are in this type of trauma, right?
Right.
And then we have collective trauma directed at a specific group, which might, I mean, it looks like similar, or maybe we can have all of them in one person, you know. One person might be living all the 4 types of trauma, and that's a lot. But think about that, a collective trauma. An example? Because they are membership, and I think you share that if you're of certain religion, you know, if you are LGBTQ, it's a specific community that might be feeling target and might have a lot of trauma just because there's a lot of you know, of targeting over them. And then country of origin, immigration status, and of course, historical trauma. I mean, that might create trauma. So when we're working with victims of certain crimes, we also have to think about these type of traumas, because a person might not have just one trauma. You know, the last abuse might be domestic violence, but then when we just start talking with them and start really interviewing them or assessing their case, you might think about they might have other types of trauma, and we have to be aware so we can serve them better. Can we go to the next one? And of course, most of you already know that some of the barriers and fears that usually the victims, and I'm talking here about gender-based violence victims, might present, of course, language, we have been talking about that, cultural, legal, economic, fear of safety, fear of deportation, fear of losing custody of children. I mean, I think all of us have been working with these type of victims, and we are aware of these barriers. But then again, let's think about trauma, and let's think about how we are going to be helpful in order to break the barriers. And yeah, culture is a lot. I mean, I was telling Rocio, this could be like a long several days talking about culture, you know, because of course on the surface we can just see some, and if you're a nonprofit that are working with a specific culture, I mean that might be more easy for you to identify, like the deep culture of your community. However, when you start working with someone from a different country or from a different community, maybe you are not going to be so easily look at that, at what is in the deep. Sakya?
Yeah, sorry, Norma, I didn't mean to read.
It's okay.
I just wanted to just go back one more time. You don't have to move the slide. I just wanted to address that. You know, recently we had a survey in Santa Clara County within the organizations, and we found that 52% of the employees that are working in the DV field are survivors. So when a survivor is becoming a staff and providing that support, I think we continue to be trauma informed about the staff members' existence, their experiences, and keep that in mind for everybody, not just that, okay, today I'm helping that person, so I'm just going to be thinking about that person, and my colleague here overworked and really upset about something, but I'm not even caring. That may not be, because there are overlapping issues many times.
Exactly. Thank you. And we're going to be talking also about that too. Can we go to the next one? Maybe the next one, because we already talked about this.
So here, you know, we all hear trauma informed, and we just want to know, what does that mean to you when you're working and providing services to survivors of domestic violence, specifically sexual assault and stalking? What is being trauma informing to you? And so you can chat, you can unmute, you can, first one to talk talks. And since no one's typing, I'm gonna put the first one. I'm gonna put, you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna share something, and then hopefully somebody else will share. For us, we serve specific groups of survivors, coming from South Asian countries, first generation immigrant women. And for us, the first trauma-informed act is trust, building trust with them. The first time they reach out, we have to build trust and respect. These are the main ingredients for us.
Yeah, so we have members that are saying, meeting clients where they are. I said, believing them. Being knowledgeable on things you can do to trigger survivors, so not shutting the door without asking, but the trust. I don't think there's one answer, you know, there's foundations, like you say, the trust, safety, humility, understanding that people could react in different ways and believe what they're saying, listening, right? Transparency. I'm gonna make a cloud for us later with this, so put your 2 cents in, because then you're not gonna have your 2 cents. But yeah, it begins with an understanding that physical and social and emotional impact of trauma that has on that specific individual, as well as, you know, like Zakia said, the professionals that help them. Some of the core elements is realizing how common trauma is, especially if we're working with domestic violence survivors, sexual assault survivors, stalking survivors. Those of us that worked a lot with immigrant survivors, I think I've shared with you, but one of the questions that you need to ask a lot for immigration law is what day you entered in the US. And because that day can be very traumatic for them, it's a very hard question to ask, and one that they don't often know the answer to, and because of the traumatic experience that they might have encountered of coming to the US. Realizing how it affects everybody and us responding appropriately. And then somebody shared, most important the moment for me was understanding how they tell a story non-linear, and how it affects the language is huge in my opinion. Yes. So we could have a scientist, and if any of you know more or are that expert, because we might have an expert here on our group. But you know, trauma impacts your brain and the way it processes. There's a really cool video for kids, and maybe we'll do about how trauma abuse impacts kids, but it impacts your brain, the way it processes, the way you retain information. It could lead to difficulty in relating to others and in recalling. I would personally add separating your personal trauma from the victim survivors, not make assumptions about others' levels of trauma, being present, listening, valuing autonomy, respect, honoring each other's journey, choice, and dignity, transparency. Great. Well, as that comes to you as we go along, feel free to add. And then for those of you that work in law enforcement and prosecutor offices, how do you think trauma impacts those crime victims? I made you guys label yourselves. I'm not going to pick on you, but now I see who's not answering. No, but how do you think it's a little different for those of you that work there, right? Because you have sometimes a different relationship. You have a public safety prosecutors and police officers have also a public safety mission and goal, as well as being victim-centered. So what trauma of the crime or trauma of the criminal justice system, but yeah, they can both be 2 different kinds of trauma that they're facing. And I think we talked about this, but challenge on how people tell the story. So sometimes survivors may not be believed or credible. The credibility can be at stake, because we were talking about how the story is not just linear, but different pieces get remembered at different times. And if you're not trauma informed, you might not believe the survivor because of the way that the story came out. It might impact their ability on how they testify. And like Beth shares, you know, acknowledge the systematic failures that the criminal justice system faces. You know, one of the principles of victim-centered approach is letting survivors define what justice is to them. and not all survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault want the criminal justice system. So we have no memory that it's not chronological. Definitely a lot of patience, especially with those in domestic violence who recant, and being mindful of the cycle, and also being aware that stories may change and memories are unlocked. Yeah. We work with multilingual, multicultural folks. So much is related to a person's previous understanding of the laws, specifically domestic violence, and can be a family issue and not a legal issue. Alexandra shares, I used to work at the DA's office, but working for the system that historically repressed and victimized communities and can further re-traumatize victims in court. So acknowledging those historical and systematic failures. And then some of the consequences of trauma sometimes are unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? Sometimes we'll see somebody that will have chemical or alcohol dependency issues. They might also forget what happened to them, and that's a coping mechanism. You know, they did that to survive. And so that might be a bad witness there for law enforcement and for prosecutors. And so the other one is here, that balancing out that I was telling you that I think law enforcement and prosecutors have to face is the being trauma informed and having a victim centered approach. But then there's also those evidence-based prosecutions where maybe a victim doesn't want to move forward. And so trying to balance out prioritizing a survivor's feelings and making sure they have choice and control. But at some point, there's that victim safety mission that a prosecutor might have to move forward with a prosecution. So trying to integrate as much of that trauma informed in your work. One of the things is rethinking about how we communicate with victims or the style that we communicate with them. So maybe sending them notices or subpoenas at high levels when they don't need to be there might cause further trauma. Sometimes somebody might use a coercive tactic to get them to have that presence or participating in court or retelling the story over and over. So trying to have those interviews in a trauma-informed way so you're not re-victimizing. I think we talked about it over, but not, being non-judgmental, trying to get them to make informed choices, and then being transparent about your mission and your goals. Like as prosecutor, as law enforcement, you might have different goals than maybe we do in nonprofits. There you might have that obligation of public safety, but trying to lift up their voice as much as you can. And then lastly, I think one of the strategies that I've heard is trying to be creative in the dispositions, right? An immigrant victim might not want that abuser deported. So finding that solution maybe to that criminal case that takes that into consideration. So let's talk about, now that we got what is trauma, how we see it, how can we be more trauma informed?
Yes. So basically, most of you already know, it's adapting practices, policies, physical spaces, even physical spaces that are important, make the services more accessible for everyone and for all. No, that's super important. And of course, this is something that Zakia was mentioning. Let's be mindful that our staff or ourselves already have trauma or bias, or that we really need to work on if we're going to be providing this type of services for people with trauma. So there are like some pieces that we need just to get together. And I know that sometimes it's difficult as advocates, for example, to create that change in our agency. However, I would recommend to talk to our executive directors and make them understand the why, because that's the only way that we can provide better services and we can really address the needs of the people that we're serving. And if you are working in law enforcement or prosecution, is the same. I mean, talk about that with your bosses, you know, so they can really be trauma informed, because it's a very common word that everybody is saying, trauma informed, but then ask yourself and ask your agency, are we really trauma informed? Are we really adapting like everything? Can we go to the next one, Rocio? So we always serve, you know, attendant to the victim. No, the victim is our center. So we really need to look for them, and then it's about safety, it's about emotional safety, it's about economical safety, it's about everything. So that's why when we're providing these trauma informed services, you can look at the safety, but in the same place to the all the needs, but always asking the victim what is what they want, not what we really want to do, or what we think. And sometimes it's easy to forget that, because we really want to help, so we believe that probably we have like the best answer, and we forget to ask the victim, you know, is this what you're looking for? Is this the way that you want me to help you? Is this the way that I can help your situation? Or should I have to focus on something else, you know? Even though sometimes, and I know that is super difficult, when we're looking at something that, and some decisions that they're gonna be making that probably are not gonna be end in something successful, we just need to let them take the power back and take their own decisions. Can we go to the next one? So some of the practices that I'm sharing with you, and you please share with us also, because maybe I'm missing something, to be awareness. That's very important. First of all, everybody has to understand what is trauma, and then how trauma impacts the survival, so we can really understand what are some of our practices that might be triggering the victims when we're working with them, or what are some of the vulnerabilities that they might have, so we can consciously, because that's super important, avoid to re-traumatize them or re-victimization. But we really have to be very conscious about this. It's an intentional, conscious way of identify how we are re-victimizing the victim, sorry. Now, safety, let's talk about safety. Safety is everything. It's physical, it's emotional, it's just a housing, it's legal, temporary legal protections, you know, it's access to health. Have you think about health? I mean, if I know that sometimes working, you need to really understand what was happening, but think about their health. I mean, are they okay? Do they have some injuries? You know, how are they feeling first? You know, of course, specific gender-based violence services can help also, but let's think about that. When we're talking about safety, it's not just removing the abuser from the scene. It's more than that. It's like all the way to make them feel safe, starting for the place where they are, having their children, having their need. Have they eaten something? Have they drink water? Have they went to the doctor? I mean, or are we just gonna jump and ask so many questions so we can, you know, hurry and receive the next victim? Sakya?
Thank you, Norma. I just wanted to add one more thing in the safety, safety planning. What we see, and mostly in, I'm sure in California and other places also, technological abuse is on the rise. So people can be tracked via their social media, people's phones are being tapped, there are softwares that can tell the abuser where you are at each moment, right? What you are doing. Even some new models of cars, people can literally maneuver the car sitting completely in a different place from their phone. So we, in the first conversation, when we talk about safety planning, of course, all of this, and also we find out about their technological situation and provide them some safety.
You're muted, Sakia.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
she was
what I
done.
wanted to
Ah,
add.
okay, thank you. So yeah, and let me go back a little bit, because when we're talking about also staff and looking at ourselves, let's go back a little bit, awareness. So let's understand that maybe we have some traumas. Let's understand that maybe that trauma impact our work with the survivors that we are working with. No, let's understand, identify, and be humble to see what are our vulnerabilities when we're working with people with trauma. What do we need to be better and feel better and don't trigger ourselves also? Let's talk about safety as a staff. Again, safety. Are we safe? Are we going to put ourselves? I read somewhere over there in the chat that they were saying going to the victim, you know, the place where the victim is. Are you safe there? I mean, as an advocate, is it safe for you to go over there? Is there like some other abusers, firearms, or something else that might be putting your safety in risk? Think about that part too. Have you eaten? I mean, or are you working so fast that you haven't drink water and then you have to interview people and then you haven't, you know, are you really safe too? I mean, it's both. It's thinking about both parts. Trust, we have been talking about trust and confidentiality. That's super important, confidentiality. Explain it over and over again with all the clients, because they might not be understanding you the first time, or they might not be even understand what trust is or what confidentiality is. So it's very important to be very intentional when you are explaining. You can trust, because I'm not going to tell it to anyone. I mean, and as much information as you can provide to me is the better way that I can look for some resources that might be helping you, you know. Empower. And of course, trust yourself, trust your team, you know, trust that you are doing a good job and that you are not savers, you know, we're not firefighters getting into the fire and rescuing everybody. I mean, we have the knowledge, we have the experience, where we have to trust in us also, and in the way that we can maybe helping some people. Empowerment. It's again, they lose the power because somebody else was having the power and control over them. So return that power to the victim. Return that opportunity of taking their own decisions, informative decisions. Share them about the rights, the entitlements, you know, about the resources. Provide interpretation and translate documents, you know, because that's the way that you can provide, give back the power so they can make their own decision. It's not the same that you just can read something, you know, in their language and so on. I mean, if they need to process, every human being process differently, you know. So let's be mindful of how we're really giving the power back so they can take some decisions. And I don't know if we can read something from
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you know, and it was a good point that Beth made, is that also, you know, when we're working with telephonic interpreters, they don't know that the confidentiality extends to them. So when we're working with interpreters, or maybe someone else in your team comes into your office, that remind them, like you said, often, and when you're bringing in new people. Emily shared, sometimes coming to law enforcement agency is intimidated. I have met victims in a place they feel comfortable, not necessarily home, but a public, quiet space. So I've heard the same thing about the courtroom, the doors shutting. I heard a judge explain how that can be very traumatic. So going maybe ahead of time before you seek that protection order can also help, because of the intimidating space that those can be. I just added to provide choice points along the way. Like you said, some points, let them make decisions. And then Beth says, just curious, but what are the rights you all remind folks about the most?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, regardless of their immigration status, I mean, they have right as victims, they have the right to be protected by law enforcement. They have the right to go to a shelter, you know, and receive information about how to be safe, free from these nonprofit agencies. You know, you have also the right to fight for the custody of your children. You know, Sakia, do you want to share some rights?
Yes, all of that, what Norma said, right? Very basics that anybody can call for help regardless of their immigration status. They can go to family court regardless of their immigration status. And also for immigrant specific, some of these really triggering questions, we see that many of our survivors will ask, what happens if I say I don't want to talk in court? What happens to the person? What kind of punishment is he getting? You know, all of these insecurities that they have in terms of whether they want to be part of the criminal justice system or not. So we actually partnered with pro bono legal aid within our county, and we came out with a FAQ that the most asked questions, then you know, in very simple terms, that what can happen to you, whether it affects your immigration status or not, what are some of the benefits that might be out there you want to explore. And we translated that in multiple languages to reach out to as many folks as possible. I think there is a slide about that, Beth, so we will share that information with you as well.
And I think right to language access, before we get into anything, if they can't even get their foot in the door and explain the language access is a big right that I think we remind folks a lot of. I thought there was a really good point that Elise shared, and I think it's I'm glad you shared that, because we need to remember that. So we want, you know, we work with a survivor, and let's say they come to somebody that's in the law enforcement victim witness part or advocate DA office. You want them to be also working with one of us, right? Because, you know, we're here to support. We all work together. We make our jobs better. We help survivors better if we're all working in team. But they see advocate, I'm this advocate, you're this advocate, and we're telling them, hey, it's confidential with me. But we need to tell them, hey, when you're a law enforcement advocate, victim witness advocate, the confidentiality is not the same because of the different obligations. And so that's good that you're reminding them that, and we should also remind them that too, when we know that they're also working with advocates in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and also I think it's important for us to be aware that when we're collaborating between different agencies, I mean, also they need to know that, for example, for a nonprofit agency, we're not going to be sharing anything unless we have a release of information from the client with the specific information of what they want me to share with you, even though you are my friend, police officer, you know. I mean, or you work at the district attorney, or so. I mean, don't take it personal. Just think about that every agency works different, and that a release of information would help everybody. I mean, I think it's the best tool so we can protect each other, and the victim can feel that that she has the power, or he has the power back. So I can decide who you can talk with, and what type of information you can share, and what you can't until I want to. So I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, we got one more share that's interesting. I also work with law enforcement, and requires us. Oh, Beth, you got to help me with ROI for sworn, so information
Request of
doesn't get sworn.
information.
Release of information. Of course, that means release of information. So information doesn't have to be shared with sworn. All mandated requirements are in place for self-harm. Yeah.
So yeah, and again, it depends on each agency, no? But in our case, as nonprofit, it would be useful, rather than you, Beth, just come in and say, Norma, can you share with me about that? I would say, sorry, you know how it works. Let's find a release of information so I can share with you.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the last point, your point of inclusion.
Oh, can you go back? It was just one. Oh yeah, inclusion. Yeah, let's go back. Sorry, let's go to the next one. Yeah, inclusiveness for all. So yeah, if you want to go to the next one. Inclusion, definitely super important. How everybody feels really value and respect, you know, how they are part of the same services that we're providing, how they feel that they have like the same opportunities. And I think this is a long way. I mean, we can talk long about this because it's trauma-informed, but also, as you were sharing, you know, like for limited English proficient persons, I mean, how can we really include all of them? Or just because I speak Spanish, I will just talk with the people who speak Spanish and not all of them, you know, and provide interpreters and provide, it's easy to say we are inclusive, but then I think there's a very important reflection of, are you really inclusive? Or are you targeting people? Or are you tagging, you know, people? And not identify if you are kind of, sometimes with the bias that we might have, we are really not being equity, we're not really equity, and we're discriminating, you know, in a sense, but maybe we're not aware. I want to share with you and share with me, what do you think? Because I've been thinking over about this. I was in a meeting, you know, with authorities, and then they were talking about inclusion actually. And there was a transgender person over there. She didn't identify herself as transgender, you know, but then the authority who invited us was saying, we're so proud that we are very inclusive, because actually we have a transgender person here, huh? Pointing to this person. So now we can say that we're inclusive because we're hearing from this person, so we know how to get these people, you know, these people from this type of group and serve them better. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, do you really think that you are being inclusive because you are targeting the people, you are pointing the people, you are disclosing the identity of the people? I mean, what's wrong with that, you know? What do you think about that? Because sometimes it might be, they might feel that they are being inclusive, just recognizing that they have someone on the table. But is that inclusion?
Yeah, it's the same that Libby shared on the thing, those people, these.
What do you think? What about the others? Or Sakia, would you like to share? Or somebody else, please. Is that trauma-informed? Is that inclusion? Do you really need to identify and tag, okay, here's a Mexican, he's a Chinese, here is a trans, here's a gay. Okay, we're inclusive. Is that the way that we have to promote that? I guess no.
No. I was looking for the reaction so I could put an angry face, but I can't find the reactions anymore. So I'll make an angry face.
So Norma, I'll give you an example from this morning, actually. You know, it might come as a surprise to many of you that in California, still child marriage is not banned. So there is a bill right now in front of the California Assembly where we are trying to ban child marriage when, you know, the court has approved for whatever special reason. Now, I'm not going to name the agency. It's a big advocacy agency. They are actually opposing the bill. So I got on a call with them to understand what is the reasoning behind opposing this bill. And she said apparently it's targeting the immigrant people of color because it's banning only the community-based marriages and allowing the court-mandated marriages. I said, okay, which community groups, which immigrant serving organizations have you guys spoken with? None, right? So some of these organizations, they sit together and they figured out what would be good for the people of color, for the immigrant communities. And right now, the advocacy is completely based on that fact that it's harming one community, one specific community, or the religion, you know, people who get religious marriages without really taking anything from us, but they they talk about themselves as inclusives and all. So we need to really focus on these things. Who is speaking for the survivor? And are they representing the interest of the survivor, taking their voices as well when they're making either policies or whatever reform we are asking for? Then are we including our survivor voices? That's the proper inclusion, right? Not just tokenism, Norma, just you mentioned that, oh, we have this one person is in this table that represents the whole community that this person may belong to, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Sakia. That's a great example. So yeah, be aware of that. I mean, it's difficult sometimes, but just do some introspection. And I would suggest to start by yourself and say, hey, do I have some bias? Do I have some trauma? Am I inclusive? Am I using inclusive language? Am I just saying inclusion just because? Or am I really giving the opportunity to hear everybody's voices rather than just mine? No? Can we move to the next one? Oh, actually, I was going to talk about the same. So yeah, recognize your own trauma stories, you know, and address this vicarious trauma. We have heard about this so much, but are you really aware if you are in burnout mode or no? You know, I think all the people that were here, I mean, we can face these many difficulties when we're serving the community, and sometimes we don't recognize that we need help, that we need to step back, that we need to stop, take a deep breath, and then keep working on what we're going, rather than just pushing and trying to figure it out, or getting the perfection case, because perfection is not real, you know. So yes, compassion fatigue exists. If you think that there is not real, it is. So be mindful of yourself, take care of yourself first, because if you are not okay, you cannot help others, right? And yes, so I was sure, no, to the next one, it's okay. So I'm just sharing some points of what advocacy isn't, but of course, I mean, you and I would love to hear from all of you if you have some other ideas. But getting frustrated because things are not moving as fast as you would like, I mean, that's not advocacy. That's not your job. Referring a victim to agency she doesn't want to. You cannot push victims to do things. I mean, let's go back to think of what the victim really wants. Thinking that her reactions are inappropriate. We have talked about that too. Believing that you're a superhero. You're not. I mean, our work is super important, of course, and we're really helping, but we're not superheroes per se. You know, encouraging the victim to think of herself only as a victim, give them the power. I mean, take off that part. You are a survivor, but if they don't want to identify themselves as survivors, it's okay. That's perfect. Give them the power back.
Yeah. And, you know, I always think whatever they did right, because they're here with you today. They survived it, and they're here to share their story. So they've already doing something right because they survived.
Exactly. Thank you. Can we go to the next one? Forgetting that the victim is in crisis. Sometimes we forget that because we are, again, rushing our day. We have so many things to do and tasks, and just forget, and then we get frustrated, you know, because of the answers that we can receive from them. And when you are doing the narrative for an immigration case, I mean, you can take weeks, even months, because you need to take the slow time that they want to share with you, and in a very trauma-informed way. I mean, you cannot rush it just because you know, my certification is gonna expire and I leave everything at the end. So I want to have one day with 2 hours and have everything done. That doesn't work.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't work directly doing declarations, what Norma was saying is there's a piece, a declaration, the U visa, the VAWA, T visa has a declaration, an opportunity for a survivor to tell their story, and it has to have the elements of why they're eligible. But in those of you that have worked with that, this is the part where that is the hardest to work with survivors. And we're going to talk about how to do that in a trauma-informed way. But this is the part where many of them disappear or find it just very challenging. And so that this is important to work at their pace.
Exactly.
Lucio, I
Rescue-
just want to add what you just said. So true. You know, so when we get so many calls about restraining orders applications, once they come in and we go through the process that these are the forms, about 25 pages, but the most important part is your statement and what you have to write in the statement. And half of our clients are gone. They don't want to do it. They don't want to relieve that situation just to get this order, right? But there is no other way. You have to tell the court, you have to tell the immigration what you have gone through to begin a process. And that can be that very discouraging. And some people will choose not to do it.
Thank you. Yes. And rescuing a victim and encouraging her to depend on you. I mean, sometimes we feel that we're rescuers and we're not. We shouldn't be. Think about burnout, first of all, and then you are taking the power and control over the victim rather than giving them the power of their lives, because they're going to be depending on you. And that's a lot. I mean, truly, I mean, that's not the type of work that you want. And sometimes I know that in the practice to be empathic, primarily when law enforcement is when advocates from law enforcement are working with victims or prosecutors, that's my experience. Of course, I'm not saying everybody, but what I've seen is that they really try to get this empathic way, and they say, call me anytime and anything that you need, I will help with. That's not true, because sometimes, you know, they're looking for housing, they're looking for public benefits, they're looking for something that they cannot provide, you know, but then they made the victim dependent on this person, you know, and then at the end of the day, they hear that, you know, nobody is helping me. That's the impression of the victim. Nobody wants to help me. But maybe she doesn't understand quite well what is our role, and what is the role of each advocate in law enforcement, in prosecutors, and in nonprofit, and how we can really help, in what we can really help, and in what we can't, you know? I don't know if we can read Beth. What is?
Yeah, she's just saying it's more empowering when you give them the resources and they find them themselves. And, you know, being an advocate, she's becoming more comfortable to acknowledge when she can't help in certain parts. You know, her resources are limited, but she still tries to be hopeful and helping people find their own resources and solution. And she's just there to support them along the way.
Exactly. Thank you, Beth. That's very powerful also. Thinking you can protect a victim, well, we're not shields. I mean, we can give them some ideas of how they can protect themselves. As Sakia was saying, maybe they can file for a protective order. However, if they don't want to, and we cannot assure that law enforcement will get there at the exact moment that they will need, you know. I mean, we really need to be very transparent with the victims or survivors that we're working with. Thinking you'll be the influence that changed the victim's life. I think that's not at all the way that we have to think that we're doing our job at all, truly, because I mean, we don't have to influence us over other people. We don't need to have that, again, power and control over others so we can feel that we're doing a good job. That's not. I mean, trust yourself, trust that the little or baby steps that you're doing with one survivor might change their life if they want to take. If not, and it's okay. And it's okay for them, and it's okay for you. Do you want to say something, Sakia, about that?
No, I absolutely agree, Norma. I mean, our role is to provide the information, provide the support, and what happens after that is not in our control. And to hold one responsible for not being able to solve a situation, just not in our control. We have to make sure we do our part absolutely diligently, mindfully, with compassion, with love, and then we have to see how it comes around.
Thank you. Yes, and then pressing a woman to deal with issues she's not ready to confront. I mean, we have already talked about that when we are doing narratives, when we're doing anything actually, no? Because sometimes they might not want to talk about something specifically at that moment, and it's okay. Trying to have a friendship with the victim. No, please. No, I wouldn't suggest that at all. I mean, burnout is the next step, and you're not helping, because if they feel that they're, specifically with immigrants, when they're in this country, they don't have family, they might have some friends or might not, or they were dependent in families and friends of the abusers, they might try to figure it out if you're the friend, and then they might expect more from you, and that's not true. Our role is not being friend of anybody. Our role is being professional and transparent, and share our role and share what we can do and we cannot do. And if they're not okay with that, it's okay. I mean, trust yourself. It's okay. You don't have to make everybody happy and everybody love you, or everybody giving you gifts because they feel that you are a friend. You're not. Let's go back to that part, no?
Yep. And then Beth shared a real cool link here. I want to click on it, but then I'm going to mess up the slideshow, but I'm going to also share it with everybody on the email. And
Professional
I think it's
ethics.
their ethics. And I bet you in there, it says the same thing about not being friends.
Thank you. Can we go to the next one?
Yeah. Yeah, this one, just when looking at your slides, Norma, I start always thinking in patterns, and I started seeing these patterns. You got choice, you got creativity, and collaboration. And so all those things are important, and a feature that I see in trauma-informed care. Prioritizing the choice and collaboration leads to an environment that fosters respect, dignity, agency, efficacy. This means that we're all partners here with the client, to help them get their needs. So with that, I had never seen this. I've seen the power and control wheel. It looks familiar to us, but it is not. It is the empowerment wheel. You could tell us about it.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. So yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with this power and control, the empowerment advocacy, but if you are, if you want to share with us something, that would be helpful. But basically, it's just respect confidentiality, believe and validate the victim's experience, acknowledge the injustice, because yes, sometimes it is, respect her autonomy or his autonomy, help her or him to plan future safety. It's just help to plan, but not feel that you have the power that the future is going to be safe. Let's just say that, promote access to community services. It's all that we have been talking about, and that's the way how we can just empower ourselves in the profession that we're doing, and in the same time, how we can empower the victims or the survivors that we're working with.
Yeah. Here's some words that that we also hear, and it's saying the same thing, right? Partnering up with them, sharing the power, increasing their capacity. Oh, we said this, meeting the survivors where they're at. And that doesn't mean going to their houses, that we mean like at their level, and letting them define justice for themselves. And I'm sad that some of our members had to leave. Earlier, I had given we're going to do a small activity. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm gonna stop share so we can see how we have our names. But I wanted us to do a breakout. We wanted us to do a breakout session, and depending on where you work, what type of organization you are at. If you work at a nonprofit, we wanted you to put non-P. That means like culture specific program, coalitions, any kind of program. Put non-P. And rename yourself there right next to your name. If you work in law enforcement or prosecutor office, then put LE for law enforcement, and for prosecutors, put DA. Not DA, I told you to put WIT for witness or victim witness. And we're seeing a lot of So since some of us already left, we're gonna just do it random. And so we're gonna split out into a breakout room. And we'll come back in 7 minutes. 7 minutes, 7 to 5 minutes. So just Norma and Zakia, just send me a text when you're ready. Okay, all right. And then Nadesia, if you could just help me just random put everybody either with Norma, Zakia, or with me.
Rosie, you wanna also talk about what we will be doing in
Yes.
the breakout room?
I can. But why don't we do it, you, me, and Norma when we get there?
Okay, so here we go. Hi, Jackie. Did you get kicked out of your breakout room or you need me to place you in one? Oh my God, why is everybody coming back?
She asked us to leave the room so we could all be together again.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, guys, it's because you know why? Because we couldn't share the slides beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so. And I did bet you Norma's people are still in her room because she has her own version of the slides. Okay, but that's okay. Me and Zakia will be together here. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. The slides weren't sending and it was because they had such really pretty images and I couldn't send them to Zakia and Norma beforehand. Are you guys able to see my slide? Do you see a slide that says adapting spaces?
We do, but I see the presenter side,
You're seeing the presenter side. Thank you.
presenter view. Yeah, just change it.
Okay. Display settings. Screen one. Do you still see the presenter slide?
No, we don't see anything. You need to share again.
Give me a second. Okay, and okay. And now here's the Zoom right here. And here it is. All right. Do you see where it says adapting spaces?
Yes, we do.
And I think. Okay. And so we wanted you to look at these spaces. This space. Think about what you're seeing. Think about how does it feel? think about. Let's break it down, I guess, first to safety. We can unmute, we should unmute, it's a small group, a small big
Grandma
group.
is coming in. Is it? I
Yes.
want to sit in those chairs. Yes.
You muted again, but if you guys want to unmute, that'd probably be best. Or open your camera or not, but tell me, let's talk about how it would make you feel safe. What about this space makes you feel safe?
I can give my opinion if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I personally don't like the setting. I feel that it is kind of like authoritative, like not in an equal space, like somebody in authority is sitting behind the desk.
Right, so you're seeing the desk structure, right? That we're used to, the person in behind the desk has authority over the other person, so there's that barrier.
Yeah. And I do appreciate the lighting. The lighting seems welcoming, the colors seem welcoming. But yeah.
Would a round table make you feel any safer if the table was round and people were sitting around it?
If we're in, yeah, even if it's round or square, but we're kind of sitting together, this setting seems like I mentioned earlier, like someone is in control and has more authority.
Okay.
Maybe if the desk was still there, it's fine, but then instead of sitting behind the desk, sitting with the client in the chair that looks like the other.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And it's all of us now, because I see Norma in the room. Sorry, Norma, breakout rooms are about to work, but Zaki, I couldn't send her email the slides, so that's why we're
I
back
see.
together.
Evelise was sharing with us. I don't know if we can. Evelise, can you repeat what you were sharing with us, please?
No, what I like about the offices, like particularly the chair for the victim, I feel like it feels like a throne, like like a good chair. It's not just a random falling apart chair. Like they're special. They're there for to get all our attention. Like I like the chairs that are in this room for the victim. I do agree with what the other person was saying about the desk. What I do normally, I just try to sit next to the victim. So I just pull my chair and sit next. So I know like being the desk to do some paperwork, some forms. So I will be just sitting next to the victim and we will go over the forms together. Or if I have a clipboard, I will just bring a clipboard, whatever the victim prefers. But I like that the chairs are really in good shape. They're big. They're like empowering them, like, oh, you're important. You deserve the best chair in my house, something like that. And then uh, do like the wall map and the walls, even the the curtains, like the one that is colorful. I like it because it's just very welcoming, very general. And I think Jim was sharing about the signs when you're walking in with the all welcome here and all the flags. So it's not about Latinos, it's not about Anglo, it's everybody's welcome here. Those are things that I like.
Thank you, Evelise. And Jim was sharing also with us. Jim, do you want to share? Is Jim there?
Oh,
I don't think he's there anymore.
Yeah, we lost some people in the transition, because we were at 20, and I know some people are leaving because we're.
I think when we try to leave, they give us two options, right? One is leave meeting, one leave breakout room. So if we are not careful, sometimes I have done that. I've just left the meeting and then realized that,
yeah,
okay,
I
instead
almost
of
made that
leaving the
mistake.
breakout room, I left. Yeah.
I almost did that mistake. So I think some people exit by accident.
Mhm.
What about
Yeah.
safety? Does this feel like a safe place?
For the victim or for me?
Both.
Because, for example, like normally I don't like to sit away from the door because you never know. Uh, so I try to have the victim on the other side. I'm the one closer to the door.
Mhm. That's the same thing Beth shares, and she also works in law enforcement, so you guys must have might have gone to the same training. I never thought about that. Have the advocate sit closest to the door, nothing separating the staff person from the exit. Smart.
Norma, I just wanted to, I'm not sure if you heard the one of the shares just before when you were joining, that the structure of the seating arrangement is not very equal. It's like one person has the authority and the client is sitting on the other side. If the both parties maybe sitting together or on the same side, either be it a round table or even a rectangular one, that was one of the comment that I
Yeah, the other one about do you guys feel like there's trust here and it's in trusting place or inclusive? Do you see the items there that might show inclusivity or promote it?
Mhm.
There's a world map behind there.
it
And
says coexist with all the different religious symbol that might be important for some people who are who feel persecuted or who feel little nervous about their identities, and the flags, of course. I
For
think it's pretty
gender, the sign
cozy.
that says, "Oh, welcome here."
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
Yes.
I
I
think you
didn't know she
got
was
muted.
Yeah, I accidentally muted you.
Oh, sorry. I was like, oh, yeah, no. You see the sign in colors that says, "Oh, welcome here," and have all the symbols below it. So it's not about any particular gender. Everybody's welcome. And we also have the sign in Spanish on the right side. So I like the board, and only because of the flag, but it's including everybody. And then the picture on the right side with the basket and the decoration. They're simple things, but different details, different textures. Like the baskets can come more like the Hispanic background. Like I like the fact that they're little pieces, but they're all different, and they're just inviting.
I also think it feels confidential too, because there's not like a lot of people's files right there where you can read, like when you go to somebody's desk and maybe you see what else is on there, that clean space, I think feels confidential to me because I'm not looking at a whole bunch or somebody that looks like they're overworked, right? Like, oh, where are they gonna find my stuff? Because
Uh-huh.
it was a mess. And also, um,
It's a private space, not a cubicle. Like sometimes we're all sharing desks in the same room, and this is individual space for each person, like for the each people, each group.
Anybody else? What about your doors in your offices, guys? When do you guys have your doors open? Do they have them closed? Does it depend?
And I think Jim is back. So maybe Jim, if you want to share what you were looking at the images.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jim.
I know Miss Molina was actually saying about the doors. I think if you have your doors open, you make anyone feel welcome. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's welcoming also to your coworkers too. When you're
Exactly.
talking about something confidential, and maybe if you're somebody that supervises people too, and I do like to have my door open because of the welcoming aspect and making sure that you're approachable and that. And then, there's times to close your door, right? Somebody shares their story, you're talking about legal options, then you definitely want to close your door. Um, you don't want to be that toxic coworker that thinks that your coworker has the door closed, they're talking about you. Um, but it's good to have, be mindful how somebody might feel if you always have the door closed, or how somebody might feel if you don't close your door for confidential things.
So sometimes it depends the case, but sometimes I try to ask the victim what they feel like. if you were not going to detail something that needs to be really confidential, I would just tell them, hey, do you want me to keep the door open and closed, or is there option? Because sometimes they will feel trapped, and you're already, I'm not enforcement, so they're already intimidated coming here. So it's more like asking them, would you prefer the door open? Would you like me to close the door? But then if you're talking about something that it could be, confidential, I would tell them, I would close the door if you don't mind. I will explain why.
It's a little hard to understand you, Evelise. I think I
You
heard you
know,
say about asking them how they might feel comfortable. Anybody else want to share? Anybody else want to share about this, how they feel about this space? Okay. Well, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised when I reveal that this space, Norma will tell us about this space. Thank you. Thank you for letting us pick your space apart.
It's okay.
Well, we love, I would love my home to look like this even.
So thank you everybody for all your comments. So those were our offices. This house that you look over there is our office, Cherokee Family Violence Center. We're located in Canton, Georgia. All of you are welcome to visit us. And the offices that we were showing are our multicultural program offices. Not all the agency has the same offices, but these are ours. So actually this teal one is mine. And I love the teal. but the important thing about this is also how did we get to adapt our spaces? By the way, Susanna, that probably is here, and Kenya, they're our multicultural advocates also. So our executive director, fortunately, she was thinking about how to become more trauma informed regarding adapting the spaces. So she came to us and she asked us, what do you want? How do you prefer to make your clients feel, which are the colors? And of course, I mean, she likes to decorate, so she also presented us some patterns and some colors, but we selected ours, we selected the decoration, we selected what we wanted, that we felt that we would make the clients to feel more comfortable. We all have these diffusers, which has been helpful, not for everybody, not for all the survivors. Some of them, some others might triggers. So we always ask, but that's helpful. We also have these noise, I don't know what is the name, these little machines with noises with rain and I don't know the name of it, but we have that. Exactly. We have those so we can use them if they feel more comfortable also. We designed these, with posters and information that we were gathering, because again, we want everybody to feel welcome, regardless of their religion, regardless of their background, and well, we just have some flags, not from all the countries, but we just have some. And then here the map, maybe you cannot look, but there are some pins over there, and actually they reflect the countries of origin of the clients that we have served. We have served 987 families from 87 countries of origin. They're not just from Mexico or Hispanics, they're from 87 countries of origin. So you can see where, so they felt more, we have been asking them, and they feel more welcome because they felt that, yes, they already served somebody from Romania, so they might understand, my community, and they might know. And I have also over there the number of families that we have served from each country, so they can, take a look and say, hey, they saved somebody from, they helped somebody from my country or something like that. And then here, I mean, you cannot see, but we were talking about these little postcards, and I will share in another opportunity with you some more closer, but they are in Spanish, but they talked about machismo, and how it says, the real men can cry, and there's a guy, hugging a cat, and the real men can talk, without violence, you know? So we include all that too. Oh
Yeah,
yes, we're missing Puerto Rico. We need someone from Puerto Rico to give us one. Evelise. Just kidding. So yeah, so this is our office.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think there's a lot there to learn. I wish we could do that. It looks like you have a contract with like Marshalls and a professional design because it does look so beautiful, but it does look welcoming. What I was gonna say is before we end, what are some things that you all do in your offices that promote? Or what, maybe it's not something that, maybe she gave us ideas. We have a sign, that one rainbow sign that says we're all welcomed here. And so we have a lot to go, but these ideas are very, very good. And well, I personally don't work directly with survivors in my office. So, but I hope that this gave you guys ideas. And maybe a way we can talk to our directors about being a little more welcoming. So with that, I'll be grateful seeing the information in other languages. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, so Rosie, I just wanted to actually, with taking from Beth, in our office, we have a quilt that we actually sewed, which is Maitri written in different South Asian languages. So that's our wall hanging, and it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And if you can open your cameras, if you feel comfortable, so we can take the picture while you are sharing some of your practices, that would be awesome also, because we have almost 2 minutes.
Yes. Oh, nice. And I'm really sorry what happened with the breakout rooms. I wish we would have gotten to, because I started to see us starting to chat and talk, and I will get that figured out for next time. But thank you all for your time. This comes very hand in hand with having organizations that value self-care, that value trauma-informed practices, really knowing what that means and putting it into play. And I think with this is something always learning, always listening. And so thank you for what you shared. We're going to talk about what self-care, what it looks like in a healthy organization next time. I'm probably going to send you guys a poll. Maybe it's easier for us to meet 1 hour. I don't know, because I noticed that we started to lose people at 1.5, but then since we meet every other month, then I might want to reach out to some of you and get an opinion. But thank you a lot for your time today, and for all those that shared. Norma, thank you for letting us critique your beautiful office. And you can, if those that want to turn on the camera and take a picture, this is our tradition.
Ready? Yes. So get close to your camera and then big smile. I'm going to count to 1, 2, smile. Got it.
I love Jim's thing. Guys, come to the conference. I want you guys to come. If you guys can get funding to go, I want to see you in person. It's in August. I'll send you a link in the email, and it would be great to get together in Boston. We could go have a dinner or something. Great. I'll see you. Save the date, June 28th, 1 o'clock for the Eastern folks, 10 o'clock for Pacific. I'm in Mountain Time, but I have to do the math there too. I don't know what time those are, but I always Google, and I'm always here on time. So I'll see you there. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank